Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. And speaking of books, I have two of my own books coming out this spring and summer. Princess Charming is a picture book, which debuts on April 19th, and Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, comes out on July 1st, and it is truly a labor of love. I hope you'll pre-order, order, and join me on tour as I go across the country. You can find out more at zibbyowens.com or bookendsmemoir.com. And you can follow me on Instagram at zibbyowens because I always post about everything. Enjoy the show. Chidiogo Akunyili-Parr is the author of I Am Because We Are, An African Mother's Fight for the Soul of a Nation. She is a Nigerian-Canadian author, speaker, and consultant with a passion for human development and connection. She is the founder of She ROARs, an organization committing to coaching women of color around the world to connect to their intuition and purpose. Her work is focused on harnessing the power of our interdependence with a foundation in the humanist African philosophy of Ubuntu, which celebrates our shared humanity. Chidiogo has lived and worked across 4 continents and speaks 7 languages, including Mandarin, German, Spanish, and French, allowing for an even deeper connection with people. She led the growth and impact of the Global Shapers community across Africa and the Middle East. Welcome, Chidiogo. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, especially given our just little chat of you being a mom of a 5-month-old, to discuss I Am Because We Are, An African Mother's Fight for the Soul of a Nation, which is truly amazing. Can you please tell listeners about your beautiful book and your family history? And oh my gosh, thank you for sharing all of this and teaching us so much in your book.
The book is at the core the story of my mother, Dora Akunyili. I like to think that it's so much more than her story. It's a story of a people, of a country. It's the story of what shaped her, what shaped us. Hence, that title of I Am Because We Are really speaks to how it's a bigger story. And her story also feeds into a bigger narrative, specifically how in life she impacted millions, you can say, at the helm of the Food and Drug Regulatory Agency in Nigeria, NAFDAC. And how did she do that? The country was awash with fake drugs, fake foods, think infant formula, faked powder instead of something nutritious for your child, and it becomes potentially hazardous. So that's what she met when she joined NAFDAC as the Director General. And she said, no, this cannot go on. Life is precious and important, and we must safeguard the health of the nation. So she fought a war. She titled it a war, and she was successful as part of a team that she rallied around her because she really believed in that and that power of going together. And that being said, at the end of her tenure, 80% reduction in the circulation of fake drugs in Nigeria, foods, and etc. And that's the impact she had. And her story goes on and on. But maybe at the core, what's interesting to highlight is that she touched people's hearts. And there's something about humans that do that, that really people feel like they mourned her when she passed. They hold her dear in their hearts. And that's a story worth telling because there's something about her, but perhaps even more so, there's something to learn and something that can live on in her story. And that's why I've told it.
Wow. And tell us more about how you decided to write it in her voice, because that was a great story too.
It came to me when the inspiration to write the book came, which I feel like was my mom inviting me into that from beyond. The invitation was to write in her voice, but I dismissed that very quickly because my mother, if you hear her, we do not sound alike at all. And I thought, I don't want to spend the whole book imitating and trying to sound like my mother and thinking what she would and how she would say it. So I shied away from that and actually wrote the whole book in third person. But there was this distance between the reader and the writing and her. So I sort of went back and finally was able to identify through a beautiful friend and writer friend that it was me. I was always in between telling you about my mother. Sometimes I wasn't even born and I'm telling you about her as a child, etc. And that was when I fully decided to step into that initial voice and trust in that a little bit more. And I went back and I revisited the whole book and changed it into her voice. And then it felt right. But I do come in at the end of the book, also in the beginning, but it's mostly in her voice. And it's a memoir, but ultimately feels like it's an autobiography. And that feels right because it's what her personality would have done, is tell you her story.
It's so beautiful. And it's such a gift to be able to step into her shoes and track the whole thing from her own family history, when obviously you were not even a speck on the horizon, right? And her grandparents and how her family came to be. And of course, that's how we understand who we end up being, right? Is if we can track all of the stuff in our history and everything that's inherited, the good, the trauma, the bad, all of it. It's like a funnel, right? It all trickles down. And then that's how we come to be. And now your new baby. It's like all of it. You can't get rid of it. It's like a rainstorm, like gushing down. So
absolutely. So if you think of the title of Ubuntu, I am because you are because we are. It's exactly that. No one is here disconnected from the whole. We're all connected to this, those that have come before, what has happened before, what shapes us. And here we are.
The scene where her younger sister, who's like a child to her, dies of, I'm so sorry to say it even that way, I see you jumping, from what should have been a completely benign injection. Talk about that and how that's really changed the trajectory of everything.
Absolutely.
If you want to, I don't mean to upset you.
Not at all. Not at all. I get that when I feel something. So Mwogo was like a daughter to my mother. And she died in her early 20s of fake insulin. She was diabetic. So my mother's fight against fake drugs was very personal because she saw, experienced for herself in her own pain, that senseless loss of lives, and millions others were experiencing around the country for many decades. And so each life that she safeguarded through via her work felt like a personal part of her healing journey of having lost this sister, daughter to her. And she felt like a daughter because she was so much younger than my mother. My mother had been taking care of her from a very young age. And my mother had this, within her family also had that, not a complex, but she had stepped into the role of a caregiver after the loss of some of her parents and eventually all of her parents. So she took it very seriously, her care for Morgan, and ultimately also felt very deeply that loss.
Wow. And her commitment to education and learning and being able to achieve all of this and having children who achieve so much and all of that. Tell me about that, her sort of work ethic and how that all got developed and how you came to be.
So I am Nigerian and I'm also Igbo within Nigeria, some southeast of Nigeria. We are known to push ourselves and our kids to be doctors, lawyers, engineers. It's like the typical joke. Within my family, my siblings have 3 doctors, the first 3, and the last 3 are not. So that kind of gives you a sense of sort of like, we're free. We don't have to be doctors. So my mother was raised by a self-made businessman. And part of her story is really interesting because her father was born into wealth, but they lost it because he lost his father before him. Then he made his wealth in another part of the country as Nigeria was just sort of coming into herself, booming hotel, timber industry. And then during the Biafra War, he lost it all. And when he died, he had nothing. So there's something about that value. And like I'm highlighting it because it really shaped my mother and her belief that there's so much more to life than money. Because she learned from someone who had been there and seen how the relationships you form, the family ties, etc., how that's like more important. So within that, my mother also knew that hard work was a very powerful part of charting the way forward, as her father had done. So she pushed herself also. She was, after the war, they had nothing. And I shared earlier, she had this belief of having a desire to take care of her siblings after the death of her parents. So she really pushed herself. And by extension, when she did have us, pushed us. And my coming, within our family, maybe an interesting story to share. It's my one sister that broke the chain of doctors, decided to be an artist. Her name is Njideka. And there was a huge uproar in our family because an artist, what is that? How are you going to feed yourself? What are we going to tell people you are if not a doctor or engineer or lawyer, etc.? And she stuck to her guns, and that gave the rest of us permission to sort of chart our own path, and also healed my parents' belief that that was the only way to have or be successful in life. And my father, would end up later saying like how happy he was that he was able to allow her, so to say, or not prevent her is a better word, from becoming an artist, because she went on to become very successful in her own rights. So that's my family driven, learning from those that came before, as we all have, and ultimately breaking and healing some of these expectations of the past, as my daughter will as well. And so it goes.
Oh, it's amazing. You had a really beautiful line when you were talking about when your grandfather, but you of course wrote it as your mom, but it just got so completely broken. And I can't, of course, find that quote now, but just when the war happened and he had recovered and then went down again, there was some line like, I never knew I could see my father be just so completely broken. And I don't know, it was a very powerful scene.
He was a strong man. He was known in his village. He helped so many indigents over the years of Nanka, where he was from, to go on and to go to school, to prosper in their business, to set up businesses, etc. So he was a strong pillar in the community. And, within that, with a strong personality. And it's quite a thing to see a strong personality broken, because it takes a lot. And that line is sort of capturing that. And in many ways, my mother most certainly took a lot from her father in terms of inherited some of that strength. Mm-hmm. And I also got to see her broken. And that was really hard.
And even how you paint the picture of the end of their lives, and it's just so moving how you depict everything, and we're like in it for the ride with you. And oh my gosh, anyway, your writing is so powerful and strong. And then of course we're like rooting for you so much. It's really amazing, because it's not only educating readers about community, history, Nigeria, all the events that led to now, many of which, I'm not, it's enough to keep up on U.S. history. So and this is a history that's not often taught in U.S. schools, right? So it's an interesting way to see it through the eyes of one woman, which is, of course, how we learn the most. We empathize and we see, and then we mourn along with you. And anyway, it's just the way you tracked the whole life cycle from beginning to end is just amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. It means a lot. It's my debut, so there are insecurities and question marks, and there's a desire to do, and there's the question on whether or not that desire was fulfilled. And I'm really happy by the reception, and to know that that story is reaching people in different ways, but ultimately reaching them. There's something about feeling a story and feeling a person. And that's all I wanted, that you could feel this woman, because she was quite the woman.
It's amazing. Really, really inspiring. What was it like for you as you wrote it over and over to go back in her life? And did you have to do research, like to find some of the stuff? And you started off not even knowing that there had been miscarriages before you, right? So I felt like you were starting from not a blank slate, but a lot to fill in.
Indeed. There's a part in the book I'd say that we got it backwards, my mother and I, in terms of our relationship, and that's all right. And here I was referring to, I left home so early. I was 9 years old when I went to boarding school in Lagos, Nigeria, which is not that unusual. And it's not a fancy British, don't think anything fancy, think waking up 2 a.m., like really hard labor, students and everything. So I was really young and I was thrown out there. And it was part of how we, the intention to give us the best and get the best from us. And that's something that my mother had experienced. So this is to say, I felt like I lost many of those formative years. Lost is a big word, but yes, with my mother, because I was 9 hours by road away from the south is where we were living at the time. So I would see her every 3 months here and there. And after boarding school, after secondary school, I went off to university in the States, and after went off to my life and never really came home. So as you can imagine, never living at home from 9 is a huge distance with your mother. And so I felt like it was at death that I really had time to go deep into who she is, who she was. And to do that, I went into my own, story, interviewed tons of people, coworkers, siblings, teachers from her secondary school years, friends, extended family, and the list goes on. Of course, my own family. And in many ways, there's something really beautiful about seeing how a person is held by, our memories. It really holds a piece of a person, a recollection, a story. And again, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about learning through through her life. Stories are so powerful. And I'm so happy I can share this story because, to your point, these stories haven't been told necessarily. And I'm seeing how powerful they are as we connect and understand each other, to know where we're coming from, what shaped us, and that shared humanity that is Ubuntu. This is ultimately, I'm so blessed by the journey of reconnecting with my mother that was every day, holding her story, asking her questions, even though she was not on this lane. Like, is this okay? Who should I talk to? What's going on? Trusting that connection always is, and always being guided in ways that after 3-4 years of being with this book, I have no doubt that she was with me every step of the way.
Your scenes when she talks to you, I'm curious about your beliefs about, spirits or life after death or signs or all that. And if I think you believe in all that, and your husband, right? Your husband was saying like, okay, your mom's here, like, let's listen to her, right? How do you feel about all of that?
I feel that it's my truth that we are guided. I was raised Christian Catholic, and this is not removed from that upbringing, because in many ways that is rooted in being guided, and spirit and prayers is tapping into that. And I think I've seen myself widen that to, I have such a deep relationship with my inner voice and guidance that is many, many years in the making, of always asking and listening and seeing how in silence this guidance come in. It's how I met my husband. It's how I moved to Toronto. It's like so many stories I can go into to share, and how when I quiet to listen, invariably this invitation comes through, this intuition. And I've become very good at listening for it and knowing when it comes through. It's almost like a language in itself. And watching how again and again, whenever I trust that sort of inner voice, it leads me to something that I could never have achieved or seen or reached on my own. And the book is most certainly a huge example, because that invitation came and I heard it very clearly, because I was practicing that year listening. That was my big desire that year, to listen. And that was the invitation I had heard, was I had to listen more the year that I was in my listening, and have always been since then. So my relationship is that of a factual experience of guidance that is beyond my own understanding, and I don't feel the need to understand it. I know, and my practice is to connect with it, which I do a lot in writing, in journaling, daily practice, which I got from the Artist Way. Julia Cameron Morning Pages has been with me for over 10 years now.
She's coming on this podcast soon. She has a new book coming out.
Are you serious?
Yes, I know. I was so excited. I got the email and I was like, yes, I will interview her. I
Oh
cannot
my
wait.
goodness.
Yes, she has a new book. Where is it? I just picked it. Well, I can't find anything right now, but yes, it's called, I think, Seeking Wisdom. Yeah.
Wow.
A 6-week journey to, anyway, I'll look it up.
She's impacted millions, right? And that's a beautiful thing to have done. And she gave me that gift. And I've been with that inner practice and inner voice and the healing that comes with it and the knowing and the guidance and the wisdom. And so it goes. And that ultimately is now the work that I do is support women to connect to that voice and that intuition. So yes, my belief system is that it's there. And I believe in my ancestors as being with me. So if they do want to share something with me, of course, like it's, it comes from within you. And it's been a new practice actually with my ancestors because I sort of just thought it's my inner voice. But with my mom, and then when I start writing about her grandmother, then I'll start sort of like feeling sort of senses of who she was that I hadn't known. And I would then call an auntie and verify something that I had felt or, received as a knowing. And so that was an interesting practice. So as I said, the book has really helped me deepen my experiences of listening.
Wow. And tell me more about your life now and your work now, aside from the book.
My life now, my work now. I have a 5-month-old. I'm craving some sun. I'm in Toronto and my postpartum body is wanting to sort of be in the sun and the water. On all these things, fuel the work that I do, which ultimately is, I hold a lot of spaces for people, as I shared earlier, to feel into what's true for them. And I have this clarity of this increasingly clear call to support the connection that can be so that people can, connect into your light, you can shine. That's not how I would normally speak, but that's what's coming through now. So it's sort of this to help you feel yourself, to feel your truth beyond fear, beyond anxieties, beyond the blocks. And as I have done for myself, everything that I say, I share, I do comes from my own experience. And I love doing that. It's been something I've been doing for the last 5 years or so, almost since the beginning of the book. And my past lives have been corporate and, I was climbing the corporate ladder and I was doing it beautifully until I had this magical experience. I was on a plant medicine journey in Peru with 9 other women. And it was this moment where I had this revelation of you're meant to break away from corporate. And I literally said no, and that's not happening. I am so, invested on becoming, whatever that path would have led, diplomat or something that would have been important and very, heady. And I fought it. And a beautiful guy that said she was with me, her name is Michelle, that was holding the retreat space. Who you are is beyond your fears. Why do you feel like your fear is preventing you from your truth? Step beyond that. And that was my first invitation to truly know that, this is a screen. This is to say, it's been a journey. I'm on a journey. I love supporting people on their journey. This book is part of that. And it is my trust and deep hope that we have an important road ahead, and everybody stepping into their yes is critical for what's to come.
Wow. Well, that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So if somebody was thinking about trying to do what you did with your book, writing in the voice of someone that they loved, easy, hard, yes, no, you recommend, you don't recommend, what do you think?
I believe the core is to listen to what the book wants to be. And from my head, it was, no, this is too hard. But the book wanted to be that, and I had to honor that. So my recommendation would be to, pay attention to what wants to come through and honor that and trust if that is to be in the first person, then it'll probably be, not probably, then absolutely listen and trust. And if it's meant to be, then you find a way. But I would say that the idea was more daunting than the actual reality of doing it.
Got it. Do you have any other advice for aspiring authors?
It's funny that you're interviewing Julie Cameron because she's the person who gave me the huge tool that has inspired my writing all these years later of getting to know your voice. And I was always a little bit intimidated because it's like, I'm not as big a reader as I would like to be. I don't think I could actually write because I need to read so much more. And I've actually found that you need to write so much more. And not just perhaps, all the writing I did all these years before I started writing in a journal would always start on the computer or on a paper maybe, but always with the lens that someone was going to read it. So I would start right away censoring myself because I have that idea that's, okay, does this sound good? What am I saying, right? So I never got to hear my truth, the truth of my voice and its purity without the fear or just the knowing it will be observed. And that's been a gift to connect, and in connecting to trust that well, and in trusting it to know that there's something to be shared, and in sharing it, that came in form of a book and whatever else is to come. So my advice is find your voice, and she is found in the silence of internal dialogue. He or she or they.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Well, thank you. This is so special. I feel like you are just this, special, soulful, beautiful woman. You're like, I feel like you need to be really famous in some way. And I hope that, not that you're not well respected and notable already. You are, of course, but I don't know. You have such a presence. I don't know. It's very special just to talk to you. That's how I feel. So special energy or something. Anyway.
I got it from my mama.
Awesome. Oh, gosh. All right. Well, thank you. I wish you all the best of luck with I Am Because We Are. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to have had a few minutes with you today. So thank you.
Same here, Zibby. And I'm so excited to know of the interviews to come and really love the work that you do and really honored that you had me here today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good luck with your daughter.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.